He starts out cool, simply demanding cash. But then, fiery violence. He's fast, tough, and well protected. Investigators vow to catch him and risk their own lives to do it. At every turn, they face dangerous surprises from a violent felon on the run.
In the Southwest, one serial bank robber claimed his loot went to the poor. But this thief was no folk hero. He had a gun and was willing to shoot. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The gunman was desperate to stay free, a threat to anyone in his way. The FBI and U.S. Marshals teamed up to capture a resourceful criminal who proved he would never stop fighting.
Albuquerque, New Mexico. On December 29, 1998, in the city's northeast section. For the employees and customers of a local bank, the day started much like any other. What they did not know was that a man who had already robbed one bank earlier that morning was about to make another withdrawal.
Have a good day. You too. Sir, I can help you over here. Sir?
When the robber approaches the teller, he asks her to give him money from the cash drawer.
Okay, I have a gun, and this is a robbery.
Trained to always comply with a robber's request and avoid any dangerous confrontation, the teller gives the man what he asks for, and more. She slips the man a bundle of cash containing an exploding dye pack.
I have this gun, and I will use it, sir.
The robber slips out as quietly as he entered.
Albuquerque 911, where is your emergency? This is a bank robbery?
The alarm goes out to local police. And because bank robbery is a federal offense, the FBI. Special Agents Scott Campbell and John Tanberg respond from the FBI's Albuquerque resident agency. It begins as a routine call for Special Agent Tanberg.
Albuquerque has had per capita more than its share of bank robberies. In the late 90s, we were in the neighborhood of 90 to 100 bank robberies per year.
What do you look at specifically?
Yet this case will be anything but routine. Agents learn the bandit was strangely calm.
Most of the people in the bank had no idea that it had even been robbed. There was no commotion, there was no what they would think and had seen previously on TV of bank robberies with shots fired or people yelling.
The tellers remember nothing distinctive about him.
Well, the physical description that we received was of a white male, possibly Hispanic, dark hair, average build, wearing sunglasses, fairly neat haircut, wearing a ball cap, and not very distinctive clothing.
Despite a thorough examination, technicians recover no usable prints from the teller counter or doors.
Appreciate that.
They find no other physical evidence.
We tried anyway.
Investigators suspect an electronic witness may have observed the robber.
The primary security countermeasure that a bank will have would be surveillance cameras. Sometimes they're high quality, sometimes they're not.
In this case, the cameras were not of much help.
You know, he comes up.
And you can see the backside.
They show the robber, but the quality is not good.
We didn't retrieve any significant information from the surveillance tapes of either of those two bank robberies. They weren't particularly good images. We didn't get a good angle. of the face. I believe that there may have been a good shot of the top of his ball cap, but nothing that gave us any significant facial features.
The robbers simply walked into 2 banks in one day, took their cash and walked out. He left no prints, no evidence, and beat the bank's surveillance systems. He left the FBI nothing that would help them identify him.
There wasn't a whole lot of information that we had to work with. We didn't believe that this was somebody that had hit any of the Albuquerque area banks in the past. We were not in a position to connect him to anything that had occurred prior to this. So in our minds, this could potentially be a traveler.
Take their statements, I'm going to call this in.
Agents spread out across the area and talk with everyone who lived near the bank. They are looking for anyone who may have seen the robber. Anyone who could give them a positive ID. Agents get a break when they find a witness.
A neighbor who lived behind the bank saw a man running out of the bank and around the corner back behind the bank.
And then, a cloud of red mist. Agents realize it must have been the dye pack. This is their man.
This witness provided a full license plate number of a vehicle registered in the state of Nevada.
This confirms their suspicions.
1503, respond code 3.
The robber does not appear to be from Albuquerque.
With that license plate, we ran through our dispatch center registration in Nevada and came up with a registered owner and an address of the vehicle was registered at.
But the address is to a motel off the Las Vegas Strip, perhaps a cover to throw off the cops. The agents have hit a dead end. They try another tack and run the plate number through a credit bureau. They get a hit. The FBI finds the loan is registered to another address in Wyoming. An agent there interviews the registered owner. He asks him where he was on the day the robberies occurred.
I was interviewing for this position right now.
The man replies he was in Wyoming, interviewing for his job as a postal worker. An alibi corroborated by his supervisor.
He was a law-abiding citizen and did not have any knowledge of any criminal activity that was associated with his vehicle that was in Albuquerque.
The man explains he no longer has possession of the car. His ex-wife Carlita uses it, and she lives in Albuquerque.
We eventually tracked down the ex-wife of the vehicle's owner. We made contact with her and spoke to her about her vehicle, where it had been, who had control of it, who has other keys to it, and where it was the previous day during the time frame of the bank robberies.
Carlita says that on the day of the robbery, she was at work. She explains she has a big family in the area and many people borrow her car.
She did not know who had her car the previous day and that it should have been parked in its parking spot near her apartment. She did, however, tell us that the vehicle was a little lower on gas than what she had left it at.
Carlita gives her consent for a search.
Remembering from the previous day that the dye pack had exploded, we thought perhaps there would be evidence of the red dye inside the vehicle. However, we did not find any.
It's possible that the witness got the license plate number wrong. Possible, but not likely.
I had reservations with what she had told us, simply because it was too coincidental that this vehicle that was seen as the getaway vehicle at the robbery the previous day and registered in the state of Nevada was actually located in Albuquerque.
No hard evidence links Carlita to the robberies, but something about this seems suspicious.
Thank you so much.
Agents suspect there is some connection.
Although she did not remain a suspect, she remained a person that we wanted to stay in contact with and a person of interest in these investigations.
Police and the FBI have exhausted their leads. The robberies go unsolved. And then, several months later, the mysterious bandit strikes again. He hits a series of banks in a very short period of time. His MO remains the same. He gets in, gets the cash, and gets out. And never leaves any evidence behind.
Beginning around the middle of March of 1999 and continuing up through the end of May of 99, approximately 6 banks were robbed. From the evidence that we had obtained in the form of video surveillance, descriptions by the witnesses and the bank tellers, and just general demeanor, we came to the conclusion that we had a serial bank robber working in Albuquerque.
Local police and the FBI must identify the lone bandit and stop him before someone gets hurt. A serial bank robber terrorizes Albuquerque, New Mexico, sometimes striking multiple banks in one day. Local police and the FBI work together to identify him and stop his rampage. As the bandit's spree continues, he grows more aggressive, according to FBI Special Agent John Tanberg.
He began to take more money by going behind the teller counters and causing the tellers to take money out of several teller drawers.
The robber becomes more unpredictable and violent. Agents begin to fear that the longer he continues robbing banks, the more likely someone is going to get hurt, or worse.
There were occasions when it appeared that the offender may be utilizing narcotics, because there were occasions when he was quite physical with people that seemed very inappropriate. It appeared that the offender was becoming more and more desperate in that regard.
He's now much more willing to use his gun. He surprises tellers by announcing the money will go to starving children in Mexico. After one robbery in June, the FBI gets better security camera photos of the gunman. With no physical evidence, the photos are agents' best lead.
We like to have public interest as active as possible when we have a serial offender. We'll get the media to cooperate and to place the information into the newspaper columns, television. People will very often respond to Crime Stoppers and call in tips.
Because the robber tends to hit in sprees, and all the robberies took place in the northeast quadrant of Albuquerque, the agents stake out banks in the area. They hope they can set a trap, and the robber will walk into it. But because they have so little to go on, the agents must rely on blind luck. They follow up on every tip, but nothing pans out.
The robber was getting more and more active. It was becoming more and more desirable to arrest him and prosecute him. And that becomes a little bit frustrating when you have an offender that you're not able to identify, even though you have done your best efforts to do so. The robber never touched anything to produce any fingerprints that we could use as evidence. The robber didn't leave anything behind.
The FBI will need to appeal to the public for help.
At one point,
They need a hook to capture the public's imagination.
on top of the counter.
The FBI bank robbery squad assigns nicknames to serial robbers.
A lot of food for the children in Mexico.
The media will latch onto the case a little bit better sometimes that way, and it gets the public interest up.
He walked out real nice.
The FBI dubs this one Robin the Hood for his dubious claims that the stolen cash goes to starving children.
He just walked right on out.
With each new robbery, local media jumps on the story. and the bandit likes the attention.
Well, the robber seemed to revel in the name that we attached to him. He seemed to like the idea of being called Robin the Hood. There were occasions when he walked in and walked up to the victim teller and said, "Hey, you know who I am. I'm Robin the Hood."
Despite the name, agents doubt the thief is giving his money away. They suspect that, like most bank robbers, he uses the cash to finance a drug habit or other criminal activities. Whoever he is, he's good, leaving no clues behind. Agents keep watching and waiting for him to strike again. It seems they are at the mercy of the bank robber. After 14 robberies, the only possible lead to Robin the Hood is Carlita's car. FBI Special Agent Scott Campbell keeps talking with her.
I spoke to her on the phone probably 5 or 6 times throughout the 8 months because in the back of my mind I knew that she had something to do with the robberies, or she can provide some information or evidence that would lead us to the robber.
Finally, in August 1999, the case breaks open when Carlita, by now 8 months pregnant, contacts Agent Campbell.
Yes, with Agent
She calls me and says, "We need to talk. I have some information that'll solve the cases."
She says the robber is her husband, Byron Chubbuck. She'll explain more in person.
And so I make a time to meet her the next morning at her apartment.
The agents pull Chubbuck's record and learn he's got a history of violence and gang affiliations.
I'm not sure what's in St. Louis. Maybe
Carlita said she can talk now because Chubbuck moved to St. Louis. Agents had offered a more secure location for the interview, but she declined.
I think she is. I mean,
She said that she didn't feel that there was any danger, that she was with him when he had loaded his truck and had departed for St. Louis. So she felt safe and secure being interviewed at her apartment, and she insisted that we interview her there.
Still, agents approach with caution, wanting to avoid a surprise confrontation with Chubbuck.
Prior to going in the apartment, I made a phone call into the apartment to see if he was around and if she had any other information on him since we spoke the evening before. Once we were comfortable that he was not around, I radioed into our dispatch using our car radios to tell them the address we were going to be at. As we entered the apartment, Agent Tamberg and I just made a quick cursory look around to ensure that no one else was there.
Carlita positively identifies the man in the bank photos as Byron Chubbuck. She confirms he's a member of Albuquerque's notorious Brewtown gang and says lately he's been growing more violent.
I fear for my life.
And she told us that the reason why she was coming forward at this time is that she was scared for her life and that of her unborn
Things are
son.
getting way out of hand.
Carlita pleads with him to arrest Chubbuck quickly.
Out of my life. I want him out of here.
He had threatened her and other family members that even if he wasn't around, if they ever talked to law enforcement, that his gang would kill them and other members of their family, or else create great harm to their family.
The confrontation agents wanted to avoid is seconds away. When a violent robber hits 14 banks in the Albuquerque area, police and the FBI struggle to ID the man. The case stalls until a witness comes forward. FBI agents interview the wife of prime suspect Byron Chubbuck. Carlita tells Special Agent John Tanberg that she feels safe to talk because Chubbuck's left the area, but she's wrong.
During the course of the interview, we heard a vehicle pull up outside. She looked out the window and said, "It's him."
The agents decide to hide in the bedroom to avoid a confrontation that could make Chubbuck turn violent. Special Agent Scott Campbell.
We'd already made plans prior to the interview that should he be there or we encounter him, we would effect a probable cause arrest or a warrantless arrest. When we moved into the bedroom, both myself and Agent Tamberg unholstered our weapons to effect this arrest, should it come to that.
I couldn't see him from where I was standing, but I could hear his voice. Also, I could see her, and I knew that she was telling him that we were in there.
The agents have no way out. Confrontation with this violent thief is inevitable.
When you undergo this type of activity, time changes its dimension, and a split second seemed like about 5 minutes.
I fired 2 rounds through the common wall back at Chubbuck, or at least where I thought he was.
He paused in his shooting for a period of time, and I had become aware that possibly a half dozen rounds had gone off, and it appeared that he was reloading, and I was prepared in a position to shoot him if he did come into the room.
A figure appears.
Thinking that was Chubbuck, I began to pull the trigger. I realized it was her, and I was able to deflect the shot as the trigger was being squeezed off.
You all right? Got it. You okay? You sure? Yeah. Okay, stay right here.
They clear the place. He's gone.
It's amazing that there weren't any injuries sustained by myself and Scott Campbell. I think we both acknowledged that a greater power was watching over us that day, because we had bullets that were coming through the wall at us, firing all through the room, and we didn't sustain any injuries of significance.
Target house, thank you. Okay.
Carlita is unharmed, though the bullet was so close it cut off some of her hair.
Are you okay? Feeling okay?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
The agents stay where they are.
Not knowing where Chubbuck was, we made the decision to stay inside the apartment, where at least we had a defensive firing position set up should he return to the apartment.
Local police are called to the scene. They rush to the aid of the FBI agents and secure the area.
The Albuquerque Police Department uniformed officers arrive and set up a little perimeter for us. We make contact with them verbally, and then we get out of the apartment.
Agents send the pregnant woman to a hospital to be checked out. Police fan out across the neighborhood to find out if anyone saw Chubbuck leave the area. No one reports seeing him go, and his car's still there. Lieutenant Terry Ward was in charge of the Albuquerque Police Department's Special Investigations Division.
It wasn't looking good that this was going to end peacefully. Given his past, his willingness to fight with police officers, the fact that he had just engaged in a gunfight with armed Bureau investigators gave us an indication that this might be his, a last stand.
Then an officer spots Chubbuck at the window of another apartment in the same building. And a standoff begins. Chubbuck is 2 apartments down from Carlita's, completely surrounded, but not ready to give up.
The Albuquerque Police Department had their hostage negotiator on the scene, trying to work with him, trying to get him to surrender, but there was no response.
Though authorities outside don't know it yet, the gunman keeps moving, making his way back to the scene of the shootout.
Byron, it's the FBI. We've got
For 3 tense hours, there's no response from Chubbuck. But then Chubbuck makes a break from Carlita's apartment.
Took him down with a beanbag round from a shotgun. That's a round that's not a lethal form, but it will stun a person.
Amazingly, throughout the entire ordeal, no one is injured. Investigators arrest Chubbuck and transport him to the FBI office for booking. Byron Chubbuck pleads guilty to 14 counts of bank robbery, plus assault on federal agents, and is sentenced to 40 years in prison. Agents recover only a few dollars of the cash he stole.
We never believed that the money was being used to feed starving children. In particular, in retrospect, after getting to know Byron Chubbuck, the last thing he would do would be to feed starving children. His main interest was to feed his narcotics habit.
But Chubbuck doesn't plan to spend the next 40 years in jail. On December 21st, 2000, he announces he wants to fire his court-appointed lawyers and withdraw his guilty plea, a calculated move, one which requires him to attend a court hearing. U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor.
After the hearing that day, he was being transported back to the Santa Fe Correctional Facility in Santa Fe County. He had obtained a handcuff key and was able to unlock his restraints from his hands and from his ankles, and was able to kick the van window out and escape through the van window. The driver heard a bang, and when he looked to see where it was, he thought he was in a traffic accident of some sort. Saw that Byron was halfway out the window.
The guards try to stop him, but he's moving fast and they can't leave the other prisoners.
Get back!
Byron Chubbuck is on the run. On December 21st, 2000, convicted bank robber Byron Chubbuck escapes in Albuquerque, New Mexico. U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor.
Get back!
There were shots fired at Byron Chubbuck after he escaped by the correctional officers, but we don't believe that he was struck by any of those rounds.
Albuquerque police helped coordinate a massive manhunt.
There was a huge amount of law enforcement activity trying to find him. There was dogs searching the area, there was helicopters, there was door-to-door searches. There was a lot of police officers on the ground trying to find him.
A helicopter systematically searches for Chubbuck by flying in an aerial grid above the area where he escaped. It is clear that Chubbuck is dangerous. The FBI knows that a desperate man on the run is capable of anything. They need to find him quickly before innocent people are harmed. As time passes with no sign of the fugitive, they are forced to widen the search area. Investigators from 6 agencies try to lock the area down. They set up roadblocks. They search street by street, house by house. Despite the massive effort, they come up empty. Soon they learn why. A local woman calls police to report she'd been carjacked. She says an hour earlier, a man fitting Chubbuck's description forced her into her car. He ordered her to drive him to the outskirts of town, where he released her unharmed.
She's able to tell us where she dropped him off and what time, and gives a description of what he was wearing at that time.
Investigators focus the search there, but find nothing, and call off the manhunt at 9 p.m. By now it's been hours. He could be hundreds of miles away.
We were not able to locate where he was at that night, and we shifted gears a little bit to go from a manhunt to more of an investigation to try and locate where he might be, with interviews of family members and gang members and things like that.
Chubbuck could not have disappeared without help. Investigators pressure every known associate of the fugitive, yet all they get is resistance.
Look, I just told you, I don't know. Look, hey, get on the car.
The infamous Brewtown gang will not give up one of their own. Because of Chubbuck's desperate, violent actions, the U.S. Marshal Service places him on their 15 most wanted list.
After Chubbuck escaped, he was highly motivated to keep himself from being captured again. I believe that he would use any means at his disposal to keep himself from being put back into jail, which made him a dangerous person.
For days, the FBI watches places where the gang is known to hang out. They are looking for any suspicious activity. And they continue talking to people on the street. The FBI also monitors any recent bank robberies to see if Chubbuck has struck again. But the robber is strangely silent. For more than a week, there's no sign of the fugitive. Law enforcement knows Chubbuck has a heavy drug habit. Soon he'll need cash for more methamphetamines, a drug that makes the user feel powerful, paranoid, and super aggressive. To get the money, authorities believe he will begin robbing banks again, which will aid the effort to locate and apprehend the fugitive. While under the influence of the drug, there's no telling what he'll do next.
We felt that he was the highest priority to get back into custody.
But some investigators suspect Chubbuck is no longer in the country. Albuquerque Police Department Lieutenant Terry Ward.
He had connections in Mexico. He could have easily fled to Mexico and hidden there. I didn't really think he would stay in the metropolitan area because his name and face was very familiar to everybody.
Put the money in the bag!
On January 16, 2001, a year and 5 months since his last heist, Chubbuck bursts back onto the scene in his old neighborhood. He robs a stunning 6 Albuquerque banks in a single day. A week later, he robs 3 more over 2 days.
Come on, come on, come on!
Special Agent John Tanberg has chased him from the beginning.
Chubbuck was a very, very brazen robber. He robbed banks that had been previously robbed by him. He didn't seem to care that the bank employees knew him already.
Each time, he brags to his victims that he's robbing the hood.
Robbing the hood, baby! Robbing the hood!
And each time, the police and FBI find no evidence. Nothing that could lead them to their elusive bank robber.
He became more and more successful in his robberies, and he was more and more in the position to taunt law enforcement. We didn't receive significant physical evidence during the course of these robberies, and they occurred very often.
With each new heist, the fugitive's legend grows.
The investigation trying to apprehend Byron Chubbuck was the biggest case in Albuquerque in recent time. He was featured almost every night on the local news with pictures and photographs and Crime Stoppers telephone numbers and things like that to try and help apprehend him. And we got a lot of phone calls about his whereabouts or possible whereabouts.
Although agents chase every lead, Chubbuck remains elusive. The FBI suspects members of his Brewtown gang are protecting him. A dangerous band of hardened criminals, the gang has the network to hide a fugitive and the means to fight back. Albuquerque investigators are hunting for Byron Chubbuck, a violent bank robber on the run after a brazen escape from jail. He's being chased by multiple agencies, according to U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor.
The Albuquerque Police Department, the FBI, and the United States Marshal Service entered into a task force to aid each other in apprehending Byron Chubbuck. We pooled our resources together so there wouldn't be 3 different departments searching for the same person.
Despite a massive manhunt, Chubbuck is continuing to rob banks in Albuquerque. Albuquerque Police Department Lieutenant Terry Ward.
He was robbing banks and getting away with it. So as long as he kept getting away with it, he would keep doing it. And that was one of the reasons we got together with the other agencies, in that he had to be stopped. He wasn't going to stop on his own. He wasn't going to leave, so he was still creating a problem for us.
Securing warrants, investigators tapped the phones of several of Chubbuck's associates. Intercepted conversations suggest the fugitive has fled across the border to Mexico. The FBI alerts the Border Patrol and contacts the Mexican Federal Police, asking them to watch for Chubbuck. Then agents intercept calls that indicate Chubbuck is back in Albuquerque. But the conversations are vague, with no direct reference to where he's hiding. Investigators maintain pressure on the Brewtown gang, making it clear that no one will have a moment's rest until Chubbuck is back in custody. It works. Early in the morning on February 5th, 2001, someone drops off a letter at a local radio station. It's from Byron Chubbuck. TJ Trout is the morning DJ for Albuquerque's 94 Rock.
It was intense. I mean, there were a lot of emotions going on when we get this. It's like, holy shit, look at this. This is from Byron Chubbuck. The note said he had conditions for his surrender, that he wanted to get out to the public, but he wanted to be interviewed on 94 Rock. He wanted us to interview him on the morning show. He wanted to implicate some law enforcement individuals who he thought treated him badly and tried to kill him. And he wanted all this out, and if all this was out, he would peacefully surrender. We didn't know if it was from him. We didn't know if it was just from a prankster. We didn't know. And right after I got the note, I went on the air with the note, and I said, look, we just received a note from somebody, and if you are who we think you are, you have to call me back at this certain number, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. And that immediately, the phone rang.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, this is Robin. What's up, Doc? What do you want to know?
Well, I tell you what.
Are you trying to bust me?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
That'd be a bad thing.
No, this is what I'm trying to do. He sounded agitated, and he sounded like he was nervous. He's like any other guy would be that's looking over his shoulder. You know, everywhere you go, you're saying, well, is that a cop? Is that a cop? If you want me to put this on the air...
There goes a helicopter, dude. Is that the feds?
No, it's not.
There's helicopters and everything.
He complains authorities are out to murder him.
These feds and these marshals and these police lie. Come on, give me a break. These guys started a shootout in my house with my pregnant wife.
The call ends ominously.
Is there any way that we can contact you?
Hell no, dude. I'm strapped down with so many machine guns and all kinds of cool shit. I'm ready for whatever.
It's clear the fugitives prepared for another firefight. The station immediately calls the authorities.
I believe Chubbuck contacted the radio station to bolster his ego a little bit. I think he had a need to be in the public eye with the publicity that was surrounding his escape.
Anytime they do things to gain attention, it helps the police department. If they crawl underground and we never hear nor see of them again, it makes it much more difficult to catch them. But if they're doing things like robbing banks, seeking publicity, it gives us tabs that we can start from to keep looking for them.
Also, Scott Campbell.
The fugitive's ego might be his undoing, as agents now have a solid lead and physical evidence.
1999. This just came from his lab, and they just said.
Lab technicians find Chubbuck's fingerprint on the letter, confirming it's authentic. Investigators review the security footage from the radio station.
We could tell, first of all, the person who delivered the letter was not Byron Chubbuck. We knew what he looked like, and this wasn't that individual. But we did have a good, clear picture of the individual that delivered it. And this eventually proved the straw that broke the camel's back.
One police detective recognizes the man as a sometime member of the Brewtown gang. His name is Ronald Baker.
Our mindset was that we would follow this individual without his knowledge, and he would lead us to Byron Chubbuck.
The Albuquerque gang squad sets up surveillance on Baker's mobile home. At one point, they see a man who resembles Chubbuck, but it's too dark for a positive ID. Somehow, they have to get inside that trailer. On the trail of fugitive Byron Chubbuck, Albuquerque authorities surveil a mobile home they think he's hiding in. At the same time, agents learn one of Chubbuck's gang associates has been arrested on state carjacking charges.
It's a good deal if you agree to wear a wire.
They use tougher federal sentencing rules to pressure him to cooperate, according to Special Agent John Tanberg.
We decided that it would be a simple matter to charge him federally so that there would be a penalty of significance that could be utilized as a means by which he would be persuaded to work for us.
The man doesn't want to do it, worried about gang retribution. But with no parole in the federal system, the man is looking at years of prison time. Investigators offer to revert to state charges, which would make him eligible for parole if he cooperates. In the end, his fear of prison prevails, and he agrees to turn informant. The plan is to wire the informant with a recording device and send him into the trailer to see if Chubbuck's there.
Go in there, sit down, and think about the wire. We'll give you time to get comfortable with it, but these guys, can you do a test on that? Just relax, get comfortable with that wire. Let's just go.
It's a dangerous assignment. If the gang realizes he's cooperating, they'll likely kill him on the spot. Over the wire, investigators listen as the informant tries to calm down the people inside. It's tense. Something's definitely going on. The informant asks about Chubbuck, but the men say he's not there.
Nobody back there.
When the tension grows, it's too much. It's time for the informant to get out. At the police station, investigators debrief the informant.
You said you heard something in the back room, right?
Yeah, big deal. That's like his girlfriend or something.
But you don't know that.
What are you trying to do?
They're convinced Chubbuck is hiding in the trailer and persuade the informant to go back in.
You are going back.
Nothing's changed. We gotta go back.
Don't
know
that.
All right, come on, let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Thanks.
Everyone all station, stand by.
Undercover officers stand by, ready to move in if anything goes wrong.
We'll use the bathroom real quick, all right, guys? All units, he's definitely inside.
Get back! Get back!
He's okay, man. He's all right.
Eventually, everyone calms down and no one gets hurt.
Sorry, man. I need a place to stay, man. Can I crash on the couch?
Yeah, man. Sorry, man.
Sorry. Look, man, I'm gonna tell my buds. I'll be right back, all right? Man, I hope you're all right, man. I'm sorry about that. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna tell my buds, man. I'll be right back, all right, man?
Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor.
He exited the mobile home and informed police that Byron Chubbuck was indeed inside that mobile home.
Albuquerque Police Department Lieutenant Terry Ward.
The informant told us that Chubbuck was very paranoid and very jumpy. Most career criminals are paranoid. They trust very few people. They're constantly looking behind their backs. They keep very low profiles. They move quite often. So they are paranoid, and sometimes it can even be a drug-induced paranoia.
Immediately, members of Albuquerque PD's specially trained tactical arrest teams respond to the call, hoping the takedown will end peacefully, but well prepared if it doesn't. Members of Albuquerque's gang unit and repeat offenders program move in stealthily. The men refuse orders to stop. Investigators scramble to contain Chubbuck, determined to stop the dangerous fugitive. But Byron Chubbuck has never given up easy. Detective Richard Lewis speeds toward the scene. Seconds later, Lewis spots the car Chubbuck's in.
When Detective Lewis realized that the vehicle coming at him was indeed Byron Chubbuck, the person we had been looking for, he made a decision to stop the vehicle right then and there.
Lewis decides to force a crash. The other officers approach and find Chubbuck lying motionless, a Tech-9 semi-automatic handgun beside him. He's wounded by a single bullet to the chest, but he's alive. Officers arrest his accomplice, Ronald Baker, still dazed from the crash. Detectives then trace the rounds that missed. Several pierced a nearby trailer while residents slept inside. But when police check on them, everyone's fine.
There was a great sense of relief because this investigation and the publicity and all the long hours had come to this crescendo, and it had ended as it should. The good guys weren't hurt, and the bad guy was hurt, and he was in custody.
Special Agent Scott Campbell.
In the end, Chubbuck showed his true colors. He wasn't the Robin the Hood mythical character that we dubbed him as, and he started believing. He was actually the violent felon that he is.
Chubbuck is later convicted of multiple charges, including escape, robbery, and assault with a weapon. A federal judge adds 40 years to his original 40-year sentence. He fully recovers from the gunshot wound that stopped his crime spree.
During the investigation, during our research and our background check, I had the opportunity to read some of his correspondence. Very intelligent man. He could be a very successful civilian living a very productive life. But for some reason, he chose to go into robbing banks. And he was very good at it for a short while. And his greed and his ego is eventually what led to his downfall.
Byron Chubbuck was quick to fire, threatening agents' lives. But because investigators never gave up, he's no longer a risk to anyone outside the prison system. 7 inmates break out of a high-security prison in New Mexico. State and local police call in the FBI. They begin a desperate search to find these dangerous men. The escapees, all violent criminals, threaten the public and terrify the community. Investigators must capture these men before they rob, rape, and kill again.
In 1987, the New Mexico Penitentiary housed hundreds of violent offenders, rapists, killers, men that juries put behind bars to protect society. On July 4th, 7 of those men escaped. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. It was one of the worst prison breaks police and the FBI had ever faced. For the innocent people caught in the prisoners' paths, it was the most terrifying ordeal of their lives.
The North Unit at the Penitentiary of New Mexico outside Santa Fe is a level 6 facility.
Open up B3.
It houses some of the state's most violent offenders, armed robbers, rapists, and murderers. Convicted killer William Gilbert is the assigned janitor for his cell block. For Gilbert, July 4th, 1987 is Independence Day.
Nothing stupid. Tell me your name and you get Wilson to open the door.
He forces his way into the control room.
Get down! Get down! No, get over there! Come on! Move it! Get over there!
Gilbert releases 6 other inmates. They join him in the control room. The inmates climb a ladder to an emergency hatch that leads to the roof. They take one of the guards with them as a hostage. The inmates walk along the roof searching for an exit. They are looking for a spot where the perimeter fence meets the building entrance so they can jump to the ground. Once they get down, they handcuff the guard to a fence and disappear into the night. The guard quickly frees himself and goes for help. Prison officials are stunned when they realize several dangerous inmates are now on the outside. Somehow, Gilbert got a gun inside the prison. He managed to get past the unit's security in less than 2 minutes. Because of budget cuts, there was no guard in the tower overlooking the roof area where the men escaped. Also, the security sensors on the roof were not functioning. The prison officials have no idea if the inmates were aware of this or if they just got lucky. The prison goes into lockdown. Officials begin a search of the immediate area around the prison. The escapees only have a 15-minute lead. The warden calls the New Mexico State Police. They want the roads sealed off and every officer on the lookout for the escaped convicts. Not certain how many escaped, guards conduct an emergency head count. They find 7 inmates are missing from the North facility, home to the prison's most dangerous inmates. Next, the entire prison is searched to determine if any of the escapees are still hiding within the prison complex. The 7 men are nowhere to be found.
Storage area is clear. Going to second location.
Local police and sheriff's departments are given the inmates' descriptions and warned to be on the lookout. Prison officials brief investigators from the New Mexico State Police. Former Lieutenant Mark Radosevich.
We have to develop an investigative plan, a public notification plan, and an apprehension plan, and they all have to be working simultaneously. If we fail to do them in an appropriate manner or in a timely manner, the results could be devastating.
The prison is 14 miles from the heart of Santa Fe, and several residential areas are within a few miles of the complex. Investigators fear the inmates are desperate enough to resort to violence. The prison staff identifies the 7 escapees. William Gilbert is a 4-time killer. His death sentence was commuted to life in prison when New Mexico abolished the death penalty in 1986. James Kinslow is a serial rapist and killer. At the age of 22, he was sentenced to 3 life terms. David Gallegos is serving a sentence for armed robbery. Robert Davis is a former police officer turned armed robber. John Schmidt, Hector Torres, and Michael Romero are all violent criminals serving lengthy sentences. The New Mexico State Police assigned David Osuna as the case agent.
I could hear the other people from the Department of Corrections saying, oh no, it's Jimmy Kinslow, oh no, it's William Wayne Gilbert. David Gallegos, probably the most notorious and dangerous individuals at the Penitentiary of New Mexico.
Deputy Warden Keith Norwood.
They're serving life sentences. What do they have to lose if they are outside the perimeter fence and within the community? They had nothing to lose.
The time factor in catching an escapee is critical. You have 24, 48 hours to catch these individuals. After that, there's a good chance that they've gotten outside the perimeter.
As minutes turn to hours, state and local police expand the search area to a 10-mile radius around the prison. Carlos Maldonado was a criminal investigator with the New Mexico State Police at the time of the breakout.
We went into each cell and brought out clothing from each of the escapees, and we sent them with the dog handler. And they would go out in the perimeter of the facility and start seeing if they could pick up a trail. The immediate need was to apprehend and recapture these individuals before they used any sort of violence against our citizens. The stress level for us in the law enforcement arena was considerable.
This was one of the most intensive searches I've ever participated in. We had individuals on 3-wheelers running around. We had people on horseback. I mean, if there was a way to search for these inmates, we'd look for it. The state police had a chopper flying around, and it had a flare with it.
FLIR, forward-looking infrared, is a special camera mounted underneath the helicopter.
With that flare, they were able to locate body heat off of the ground.
Police helicopters coordinate with search teams on the ground.
We could provide immediate response to any potential sightings. In the absence of sightings, we identified areas where we thought individuals could be hiding out, conducted searches. We'd move tactical teams into those areas to conduct foot searches.
We had different teams starting a house-to-house search in the near areas of the penitentiary. And then there were other teams that were following up on the leads, people that were calling in, the suspicious people and what have you.
Near the prison complex, canine units pick up the escapees' trail.
They were able to maintain a scent trail until they crossed Interstate 25, and then they lost it.
At the edge of the interstate, the trail stops cold. For law enforcement, it's an ominous sign.
If they got a gun into the facility, then more than likely they planned on a vehicle. To escape on foot here in New Mexico, it's kind of difficult because there's not a lot of water, there's a lot of cactus, there's snakes, there's just all kinds of stuff that run around here at night.
The Corrections Department, the Mexico State Police, the Sheriff's Department had a series of predetermined roadblock locations that in the event of an escape or an emergency would be manned in a certain order.
Law enforcement expands the search area and calls in officers from all over New Mexico to man the vast network of roadblocks.
Not only do we have the state police, but the Santa Fe City Police Department, Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department, we have different tribal officers here. We have Tesuque, Pojoaque, San Ildefonso, Santa Clara, Santo Domingo. I mean, these all encompass Santa Fe County. And then I believe that we also pulled in officers that were currently in class at the New Mexico Law Enforcement Academy. We basically had an inner perimeter roadblocks and then an outer perimeter roadblocks, just in the event that they somehow got past the first group.
For law enforcement, the pressure is building. If these escaped killers are hiding out in the residential areas around the prison, no one is safe. In Santa Fe, New Mexico, 7 men convicted of robbery, rape, and murder break out of a maximum security prison. Investigators suspect the mastermind is William Gilbert, a 4-time murderer. 7 months before the escape, Gilbert had his death sentence commuted by the governor.
When an inmate escapes, they're looking to get out and never come back.
Former New Mexico State Police investigator David Osuna.
They may do just about anything to keep from being apprehended again, and that includes the possibility of murder.
Authorities need to make the public aware of the danger.
I've never heard of a correctional officer being shot, and it was just my opinion that they'll shoot anybody to get away.
The governor authorizes the use of the National Guard in the fugitive hunt and gives a shoot-to-kill order to police searching for the 7 men. Investigators know that the physical search for the escapees is only part of their task. They need intelligence. Authorities pore over the fugitives' records.
We're going to look at the segregation logs. We're going to see how many phone calls they've made. We're going to see who they've been associated themselves with.
Lieutenant Mark Radosevich.
The institutions keep volumes of records. Anyone on a visiting list, anyone that's come into the institution, when individuals were moved from cells, where they went during the day, can all be located in one form or fashion. It takes time, but you can find those records.
Right now, it seems the escaped inmates have every advantage.
These people have time on their side in terms of planning and strategizing and putting these things together.
Carlos Maldonado was a criminal investigator with the New Mexico State Police.
But as we know, the best conceivable plans always have something going wrong. So we were hoping for that human element to present itself.
Investigators believe at least one other person must have helped the inmates escape.
The weapon that the inmate had, how did it get into the facility to begin with? Could there have been another accomplice that maybe was employed through the correctional facility? We didn't know, but we knew that the weapon gained or entered into the facility somehow.
They also suspect someone close to the inmates must be helping them now, possibly family or friends.
They're going to need to change their clothes. They're going to need food. They're going to need transportation. They're going to need a means to communicate. We have to know early on, if these inmates are going to contact somebody, who would it be? It doesn't take any sort of sophisticated analysis or evaluation to know that it's probably going to be family members that are going to step out on the limb and risk their own freedom to try to help out a loved one. That's kind of the common denominator, and one that we're going to look at immediately.
Investigators compile extensive lists of people associated with the escapees.
We wanted to know exactly who was visiting with who, and to find out if maybe if it's another inmate that they showed particular interest in, maybe they're family members. So we tried to expand that net as much as we could without depleting resources to the point where you reach the point of diminishing return.
It's a huge undertaking. The FBI joins the search. Former special agent in charge of the Albuquerque FBI office, William Branner.
What we can do is any out-of-state leads that are developed as a result of this investigation, no matter where they are in the country, we can have an FBI agent on scene within an hour or two to conduct the interview or to gather the information.
At the prison, state police investigators question the inmates, but they have to do it carefully.
Timing was very important when you interview inmates. It's a different world. Everybody's timing everybody else. They're watching. If you spend more time with one particular inmate than you do with somebody else, the first question they're going to ask, I wonder why. Did he divulge any information? And their life is on the line. We had a timer set up. The inmates would come in, we'd talk to them for 20 minutes, and regardless of where we were in the conversation, we'd send them back.
The inmates of the North Unit say they were not aware of the escape plan.
These guys kept that plan pretty confidential. And for inmates not to know things what's going on, especially in their pod, that's pretty unusual.
Investigators also questioned prison personnel. They learned that days before the breakout, guards confiscated copies of state police and prison radio codes from Robert Davis's cell. Hours after the escape, guards made another surprising discovery in Davis's cell. Aeronautical charts and maps of Mexico.
Was that truly part of a plan to take a plane, to hijack a plane, to drive to Mexico? Or is it to send us off in a direction 180 degrees from where they're really at?
We sent an officer over to the airport in Santa Fe.
State police asked airport security to be on the lookout.
Bob Davis, although he's an inmate at the facility, is a very intelligent individual.
This was not an escape of opportunity. It was well planned. High-risk individuals. They were highly motivated.
Investigators need help and appeal to the public.
We want the local people to call in if they see one of these individuals.
Police released the fugitives' mugshots and rap sheets to the press.
And more importantly, they need to know how dangerous these individuals are so that they don't allow them in their houses, don't assist them in any way.
They were our eyes and ears. They started airing footage on the history of each of the inmates.
Thousands of calls overwhelmed police hotlines.
Anybody who saw anything unusual in Santa Fe or within 40 miles of Santa Fe were calling the police departments or the Crime Stoppers hotline, reporting suspicious or unusual activity.
While investigators sort through tips, they work to close off every avenue for escape.
Santa Fe was completely locked down. I mean, everybody from the governor on down was exceedingly concerned about this. The whole state of New Mexico was concerned about it.
The residents of Santa Fe are terrified.
Because they're constantly living in a state of fear that somebody might break into their house, somebody might cause harm to their family, somebody could be killed. It was just my opinion and the opinion of the investigators that these inmates were still in the Santa Fe area. We felt very strongly that they had not escaped our perimeters.
2 days after the escape, a homeowner in Santa Fe reports a break-in at his house. Police find a prison jumpsuit. The find indicates that some or all of the inmates may still be in the Santa Fe area. Then on that same day, 2 miles from the penitentiary of New Mexico, at a local racetrack, a security guard makes his rounds.
A security guard who was on his toes saw this individual walking through the racetrack.
Come here, where are you going? Come on over here, sir.
He confronted the individual, and after a quick discussion, realized this was probably one of our escapees. He was able to handcuff the guy, call local officials.
New Mexico State Police identify the trespasser as Hector Torres, one of the 7 escaped inmates.
With one captured, there's always the possibility that the other ones are close by.
1 inmate has been found. Authorities dispatch a SWAT team to the racetrack to search for the other 6 convicts. If the other men are hiding at the track, police have them cornered. But that is when these men are most dangerous. Outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, 7 convicts escaped from a maximum security prison. 1 man is in custody, and SWAT teams search a racetrack complex for the other 6 escapees. There is no sign of the remaining fugitives. Investigators' only lead to their whereabouts is Hector Torres, the man they captured.
Where are the rest of the guys?
Carlos Maldonado was a criminal investigator with the New Mexico State Police.
When we interviewed him, he said he walked for hours. Didn't know where he was going. Just continued walking and walking and walking. And he said, before I knew it, and he was so fatigued, he was tired, he wound up back at the penitentiary.
Torres claims he knew nothing about the escape before Gilbert opened his cell.
There was no plan.
He just knew that he was free for the moment and took advantage of that.
According to Torres, 4 inmates stuck together: Gilbert, Davis, Kinslow, and Gallegos.
But the rest pretty much just scattered in different directions.
Investigators suspect these 4 prisoners planned the escape. Gilbert only released Torres, Romero, and Schmidt to distract law enforcement. Former FBI Special Agent in charge, William Brannon.
It was a pretty good thing to do as far as the ringleaders were concerned, because they would put these people loose and out there, and who didn't have a plan, who didn't know where they were going to go. This would certainly occupy law enforcement in running these individuals down.
3 days after the escape, police believe 6 of the inmates are still somewhere near the Santa Fe area. Armed robber Michael Romero and violent offender John Schmidt, 4-time murderer William Gilbert, armed robber and former cop Robert Davis, serial rapist James Kinslow, and robber David Gallegos. The men pose an incredible threat to the citizens in the area.
There was no doubt in law enforcement's mind that there were going to be home invasions, and that these people, they had to seek food, they had to seek shelter, and they had to seek transportation to get out of the area.
On July 7th, authorities' worst fears are realized. In a suburb of Santa Fe, a teenager babysits her young cousin.
She looked out the window and saw a man coming to the house. She was so paranoid, as everybody was in Santa Fe. She was able to call the police to say that somebody suspicious was approaching.
One of those guys is trying to break in. Oh no, he's trying to break into the window. Oh no, he's at the door. He's at the door. Please come, hurry.
Put the phone down! Put the phone down!
What do you want?
I need something to eat. I need some food. I need some food. Come on.
Incredibly, the intruder only steals a bag of bread, then flees. Police arrive quickly. Investigators ask the teenager if she can identify her attacker. Former New Mexico State Police investigator David Osuna.
This young lady identified David Gallegos as one of the escapees who broke into her house.
SWAT teams converge on the area.
Law enforcement officers searched every home within a mile radius during that time looking for the escapees.
Gallegos and the other 5 fugitives are nowhere to be found.
When you get a call like that, and the idea is that these inmates have broken into a home and they're taking clothes and food, that means they're trying to change their identity as an inmate. They're trying to mix in with the general public and maybe go to a restaurant or do whatever some of the local people do. But they're looking for a way to get out of the Santa Fe County area.
Stay place. The next day, there's another sighting. 85 miles south of Santa Fe, a highway patrol officer sees something strange on the back of a flatbed truck. When he pulls the truck over,
You, let me see your hands.
a man is hiding on the back.
Slowly down, slowly. Come on down. Hands up. Get on the ground. Get your hands out in front of you.
It is one of the escapees, former police officer turned armed robber, Robert Davis.
All right, tell me
The
about
New Mexico State Police questions Davis.
What are you gonna do for me?
The interview with Bob Davis was instrumental in breaking this case wide open. What Bob was able to tell us is how this plan developed from the initial stages all the way to the escape and where probably the other 3 important escapees were currently at.
According to Davis, Gilbert, Kinslow, and Gallegos are hiding out together. As police suspected, a relative of David Gallegos is helping them.
This relative was going to take him to a storage facility here in Santa Fe where they would be housed until the roadblocks were down, and then a relative of David Gallegos would once again meet them, bring them to Albuquerque, and they would make their escape all the way to California.
Former New Mexico State Police Lieutenant Mark Radosevich.
But I think there was a sense from the investigative team and the management team that the information wasn't exact, but it was credible.
Based on Davis's statement that the men planned to cross state lines, New Mexico State Police contact the FBI.
Ultimately, I think the FBI found that there was enough information that the individuals might have left the state of New Mexico, then giving them federal jurisdiction.
The FBI decided to file an unlawful flight to avoid confinement complaint. This is called a UFAC complaint.
The FBI's UFAC casts a dragnet across the nation. Agents around the country are now on the lookout for the convicts. The manhunt intensifies. In New Mexico, investigators turn their attention to trying to find the storage unit. According to Davis, it was rented under a fake name and address. Agents and police searched the records of every storage facility near the airport in Santa Fe. They checked the names and addresses in the files, all of which are valid.
Let me give you my card. You do see
The fact that we couldn't find Gilbert, Kinslow, or Gallegos indicated to us that they probably had some type of help and somebody was hiding them in the Santa Fe area.
Agents and state police trying to find out who is helping the fugitives investigate the people closest to them.
The FBI tracked them down, found their locations, determined what type of people they were, whether or not they could have been involved in assisting the people in the prison break, and we eliminated a lot of these people as probably not having been involved, but we came up with a handful who we thought might have been involved, and among them was Gallegos' brother-in-law.
The different agents, including myself, found themselves in Albuquerque a lot, interviewing members of the David Gallegos family.
According to Gallegos' brother-in-law, he has not been contacted by the fugitives. He has no idea where they are. Investigators suspect he is lying. Several more days go by. The roadblocks stay up. Hundreds of officers continue to search for the remaining 5 fugitives. Even if it's true that 3 of the escapees are on their way to California, 2 remain somewhere in the Santa Fe area. July 11th, 7 days since the breakout. A 17-year-old girl is house-sitting in an exclusive neighborhood. She has no idea she is not alone. 2 gunmen suddenly appear. They demand the teenager's car keys.
Come on, you didn't hear nothing, you didn't see nothing.
She notifies the Santa Fe police. As an officer responds to the scene, he spots 2 of the fugitives coming straight at him.
410 vehicle spotted in pursuit.
The officer swerves just in time. The fugitives aren't so lucky.
You would think that both of them would get hurt and injured because it was a good crash. It wasn't just like a little fender bender.
Michael Romero is captured, but Schmidt is able to run from the scene. He's hiding somewhere in the neighborhood, possibly injured, and desperate to do whatever it takes to remain free. In New Mexico, 3 prison escapees have been recaptured. 4 are still on the run. On the morning of July 11th, a Santa Fe resident notices a blood trail leading to his garage. He notifies police. The house is in the neighborhood where Michael Romero was arrested and John Schmidt disappeared the night before. Officers follow the trail of blood to the homeowner's garage.
Put your hands where I can see them.
There, they find John Schmidt.
This individual was arrested in a garage near the governor's mansion in downtown Santa Fe, which caused a little bit of a stir.
Former FBI Special Agent in Charge William Brannon.
After the first 4 individuals had been apprehended, the only people on the loose were Gilbert, Kinslow, and Gallegos.
They are the 3 most dangerous escapees. 4-time murderer William Gilbert, serial rapist James Kinslow, and robber David Gallegos. But nearly 3 weeks after the escape, the investigators are running out of time and money.
Not only had the main players not been caught, but now we were looking at a great expense in keeping these roadblocks up and using the manpower that were available. So finally, a command decision was made: pull the roadblocks.
David Osuna of the New Mexico State Police questions Robert Davis again. Davis sticks to his story.
He was insistent that they're here in Santa Fe and that they're at a storage shed. You know, and obviously, I believed him.
Agents and police continue following the only lead they have.
So please step behind the vehicle.
They take another look at all the storage facilities in the Santa Fe area.
We finally ended up at this one storage facility off of Airport Road.
All right, ready?
Let's go.
Now! Nothing!
At this facility, investigators find that several people occupied one of the units for an extended period of time.
Nothing. I didn't see anything.
Investigators find a tiny hole drilled through the concrete wall of the storage unit.
And they could actually see, although it was a very small hole, traffic going by, people going by and talking, what have you.
Lieutenant Mark Radosevich.
The agents did check that particular location repeatedly, went through the records, but there were some cards that had been inadvertently stored in another file cabinet that were not provided to the agents on any of their visits. Again, we were that close.
The discovery of the storage unit confirms the agent's suspicions that the fugitives are receiving outside help.
We felt that someone had to have contact with that group.
Investigators surveil the remaining fugitives' family members. Former New Mexico State Police criminal investigator Carlos Maldonado.
We use a technique where it's not aggressive, but it's obvious surveillance. Where they look out the window, they know that you're parked out there.
37, go ahead.
Yeah, he's on the move right now.
And it's to raise the stress level so that hopefully mistakes are made.
Agents set up PIN registers, a device that enables them to track the numbers of all incoming and outgoing calls on the phone lines of a select number of the fugitive's associates and family members.
We had a PIN register installed on a particular individual, and on the 21st day, that individual received a call from a motel in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
We sent an FBI agent and a state police agent to that motel.
FBI agent.
They show the desk clerk photos of the remaining fugitives.
You have seen them before?
Yeah, I have seen.
The desk clerk recognizes the three men. She says they checked out of the hotel a few minutes ago.
Did you notice what type of car they were driving?
Police and FBI agents search the area. There is no sign of the fugitives.
We recognized that Wayne Gilbert and Jimmy Kinslow and David Gales had probably left the state. We didn't get any more tips, no phone calls, no nothing.
Investigators believe California is a likely destination. They know Gallegos has relatives there. And recaptured escapee Robert Davis mentioned California. Authorities contact police agencies and FBI offices in California to be on the lookout for the three men. They believe the three fugitives are traveling together. Authorities most fear Jimmy Kinslow.
They just knew or felt or believed that because of his background, being a stone-cold killer and rapist, that he was going to do that again.
The FBI's fears are justified. In Arizona, Kinslow has already identified a victim. 7 inmates make a daring escape from prison. Only 3 escapees remain free. They are heading west, and 1 is taking hostages. Convicted murderer and rapist Jimmy Kinslow forces his way into an Arizona home.
Move! You move, I'll kill you right now!
He demands to know if there are any guns inside.
Don't move!
Former FBI Special Agent in Charge, William Brannon.
He obtained several handguns, a shotgun, and I believe 4 rifles. So now he's very highly armed.
He forces the entire family into the car. Kinslow orders the father to drive from Flagstaff to Barstow, California, a 350-mile trip. In Barstow, he holds the family hostage in a motel room. 3 hours later, he leaves the motel. He takes the couple's 11-year-old daughter with him.
He leaves in their car with the 11-year-old and leaves the area. The mother and father are able to free themselves from their being tied up.
Go get the police, quick. Oh, hurry, please.
They notify the Barstow Police Department.
Barstow police immediately contact the FBI.
He's got my little girl.
The FBI responded to the area and began looking for the car that Kinslow was using.
Former Special Agent in Charge of the Los Angeles FBI office, Bucky Cox.
The fact that Kinslow now was on the loose with an 11-year-old girl notches this up considerably. There is no type of case in law enforcement that gets law enforcement's attention more than the possible harm to a child.
Agents and police searched the streets looking for the abducted family's van. 2 hours later, they get an incredible break. The 11-year-old girl approaches a police car in Garden Grove, California, 115 miles from Barstow.
All right, hold on a second. Step
She
back.
tells the police officer she was abducted in Flagstaff, Arizona by an escaped convict along with the rest of her family.
What's happening?
The kidnapper drove her around for several hours before dropping her off behind a restaurant.
And says to her, "You stay here. I'm going to come back. If you're gone, I'll find you." Well, as soon as he left, she disobeyed that order and walked out to the street and flagged down a patrol car.
She gives police an accurate description of Jimmy Kinslow. According to the girl, the kidnapper is still driving her father's car. She tells them she overheard him making plans to meet friends at a trailer park somewhere nearby. Garden Grove police spread out and search the area looking for the abducted family's car. They quickly spot it.
Garden Grove didn't approach that vehicle. They backed off of it to establish a surveillance to see if they could catch someone coming to that vehicle. They backed off in such a manner as not to tip anybody off that they were in the area and had any interest in that vehicle.
An FBI SWAT team sets up a forward command post in a strip mall 2 blocks from the trailer park.
We didn't want to be in a position where we could be observed by anyone who might be going to that vehicle or have anything to do with that vehicle.
Garden Grove detectives maintain surveillance on the van.
All of a sudden, an excited voice came across the radio. The lights are on in the van, and it's fired up. Meaning somebody had started the van, turned the lights on, and seconds later, the van is moving. It's rolling.
Vehicle's about to move. It's backing up.
They pull out in pursuit. Investigators thought the vehicle was empty. Apparently, Kinslow was inside all along. The convicted murderer and rapist is finally in their sights.
The FBI had to make a decision. Did they want to follow the car, see where it took them to try to capture Gilbert and Gallegos, or should they immediately arrest Kinslow? They made the absolute correct decision and decided to immediately take down Kinslow.
FBI agents and Garden Grove police converge on all 4 sides of the vehicle.
He's got a van in front of him. He's got FBI behind him. I think there's a Garden Grove patrol car behind him. I'm actually coming the opposite way and turn in towards the side, so he has no place to go at this point.
Kinslow is outmanned and outgunned. But police fear this ruthless murderer will not go down without a fight. In Garden Grove, California, agents and police have dangerous fugitive Jimmy Kinslow cornered. Investigators fear they are in for a fight.
Let me see your hand!
Jimmy Kinslow finally gives up.
All right, down! Let's go! Get up! You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or can will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to have an attorney. You can't afford one. One will be appointed to you.
Investigators search the fugitive's car and make a chilling discovery. Former special agent in charge of the Los Angeles FBI office, Bucky Cox.
We looked down, and there was a .357 Magnum pistol, revolver, that was laying on the floorboard on the driver's side.
Investigators find additional weapons in the back of the vehicle. Kinslow is interrogated at the Garden Grove police station. Agents need to know where the remaining 2 fugitives are.
Okay, the more you help us,
The police
the better.
turn up the pressure.
Hotel rates, the fire.
Although Kinslow has nothing to lose, he starts to talk.
The fire station motel.
Former FBI Special Agent in Charge, William Brannon.
There's no honor among these guys. Kinslow's told us where Gilbert and Gallegos were.
According to Kinslow, the last two fugitives are staying at a motel in Garden Grove, California. He doesn't know the room number, but he can describe the room's location.
Kinslow agrees to draw a sketch of the motel and of the room. And then he also tells us that another family member is there that had helped Gallegos and Gilbert and actually brought them to the motel.
Gilbert and Gallegos are on the second floor. The family member is in the room directly beneath them. From their command post 2 blocks from the motel, the FBI decides whether to raid the rooms. The fugitives are armed. They have nothing to lose. And the motel is full of innocent people.
That's a sketch that I drew based on information the suspect.
We could get, in law enforcement terms, burned. They'll spot us, and now we've got really a dangerous situation on our hands. Conversely, if we hit the wrong room, then it's going to wake up the whole neighborhood, and we've got a dangerous situation on our hands. So we weighed the options.
It's a risky operation, but losing the fugitives is even riskier. The FBI decides to raid the motel rooms.
All straight, ready to go.
So here we had 2 separate rooms, one where the remaining 2 escapees from New Mexico are located, and the other one where the people who assisted or facilitated the escape are staying.
Ready to go? Let's go. Let's do this thing. All right.
So what we decided is we are going to do a SWAT entry on the room with the 2 fugitives, and we are going to do basically a knock and announce on the room down below as soon as the flashbang goes off.
At 6:30 a.m., an FBI SWAT team forcibly enters room 243 at the motel.
No knock was made. A device called a flashbang was thrown in. It immediately disorients whoever is in the room.
William Gilbert and David Gallegos are quickly taken into custody.
Don't move!
Inside the motel room, agents find 2 sawed-off shotguns and a revolver, along with a large quantity of ammunition.
I think once these 3 individuals got to the motel, they probably figured that they had pulled it off and that they were going to get off scot-free. But not so, because technology and law enforcement caught up with them.
All 7 fugitives are finally back in custody.
It was an exhilarating experience when they were caught because the team had done their job. It was great.
On July 31st, 27 days after the escape, the last of the fugitives are returned to the penitentiary of New Mexico. Their breakout had been months in planning. To this day, no one knows how Gilbert got a gun inside the prison. After the escape, New Mexico built a new prison with more modern security features. Thanks to the hard work of the New Mexico law enforcement agencies and the FBI, Michael Romero, Robert Davis, John Schmidt, and Hector Torres face additional charges. William Gilbert, Jimmy Kinslow, and David Gallegos will spend the rest of their lives in prison. They work with perfect precision, stalking their prey, waiting for the right moment to strike. The payoffs are huge. millions of dollars for a few minutes of violent work. They leave no evidence behind, but to get away, they're willing to leave bodies. The FBI and local police must stalk this dangerous gang of thieves and break up their bad company.
In Boston, FBI agents and local police tracked a gang of robbers who specialized in armored car takedowns. Their MO was familiar. The gang used precise timing to steal millions in cash and burn their getaway cars to destroy evidence. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. As the robberies grew more violent, agents launched a complex sting to trap a deadly ring of thieves and shut down their dangerous operation.
December 22nd, 1987. Outside Boston, Massachusetts, just before 8 a.m. A time when most professionals are heading to work. But today, a group of professional criminals are also on their way to a job. Their target is Weymouth, 18 miles south of Boston. They arrive at a bank at 8:30 a.m. and sit tight. They aren't waiting for the bank to open.
All right, guys, lock and load.
The heist is on.
Let's go! Gotta get out of here! Put your hands up! Look down. Don't you look at me. Don't you look at him.
They stop a few hundred yards away behind a nearby shopping center.
Hands up! Get out! Get out! Get out! Don't move! Let's go, guys! Come on, let's go! Get some water. Come on, guys, let's go! Come on, you guys, hurry up, hurry up! Come on, let's go! We're on the clock, let's go! Come on, we're almost there, let's go, let's
go! The men get away with over $1 million. It's one of the largest armored car heists in Massachusetts history. Weymouth police get the call about the robbery and notify the FBI. Police officers and agents respond within minutes. FBI Special Agent Jim Crawford is among the first to arrive at the scene.
I was in that immediate area for unrelated reasons, conducting an investigation. I heard on my radio that there had been a robbery of an armored truck in Weymouth. Upon arriving at the scene, which was just probably a few minutes after the robbery, I proceeded into the parking lot area. I observed several money bags that were left outside on the ground that the robbers did not take with them. That was the most surprising fact that I observed immediately.
While investigators are working the scene, they receive a report of a burning blue van fitting the description of the getaway vehicle. The van is less than a quarter-mile from the bank.
There was a vehicle there that had been burning for probably at least 10 minutes, and pretty much it was burned out completely. There was no determination of any vehicle identification number. There was nothing of any evidentiary value found in that vehicle.
At the bank, forensic investigators combed through the front parking lot where the robbery began. They search for anything the robbers might have left behind, but find nothing. Police also process the armored car for clues. Again, they find nothing. The armored car crew tells agents they didn't get a good look at the robbers' faces because they wore masks.
All of them had masks, but I think they were white because I could see one of the eye holes.
The robbers also wore gloves. Forensic techs don't lift a single usable print. What troubles agents most about the heist are the robbers' tactics.
It was very unusual. Gunmen unloaded the vehicle, and they had a countdown. One person was serving as the count. He used a stopwatch. They knew exactly how much time they were going to spend perpetrating the robbery. The professionalism that they handled the truck, the getaway area where they had burned out the vehicle, very professionally accomplished.
The job is so professional, agents have almost nothing to go on. The only clue investigators have is puzzling.
I believe they left on the ground over $1 million.
These robbers, whoever they are pros. Leaving that much money to stick to a timetable suggests they've done this before.
This was the most disciplined, the most training, the most cautious group that I've been involved in with 30 years in the FBI.
The agents know this is going to be a tough case to crack. This gang is good, and they probably are not working alone.
Usually on this type of professional robbery, it's always looked at the possibility of an inside person. There was nothing to indicate here that was the case. I know the guards had been interviewed during the course of the investigation, but nothing to indicate that they were involved in this robbery.
The precision of the Weymouth heist reminds Agent Crawford of the string of jobs pulled over 25 years ago by a legendary Boston criminal named Richie Harold.
During the later part of 1977, I was the case agent on a robbery of the Wells Fargo armored truck that occurred in Braintree, Massachusetts. As a result of that investigation, I developed sources that indicated the primary suspect in that robbery was an individual by the name of Richie Harold.
In the 1960s and 1970s, Richie Harold and his gang were suspected in multiple armored car robberies which were considered to be perfect crimes. Although no fingerprints are found in Weymouth, Agent Crawford feels Richie Harold had something to do with this.
The similarity between the Weymouth armored truck robbery and the Wells Fargo and Braintree were that they were restricted on time on the Wells Fargo robbery, just as the Weymouth one. They were highly professional in their commending of the vehicle, the armored truck. They left no witnesses behind, nothing of evidentiary value.
But Richie Harold couldn't have pulled off the Weymouth job. He's dead. The Boston area has always been a haven for armored car robbers. Agents know what to do. They hit the streets and start working the usual suspects.
In the 60s and the 70s, Charlestown was kind of infamous to have a lot of young men that were involved in bank robberies and armored truck robberies. hijackings of trucks, for example, were very prevalent in the 70s there, and then more professionals got involved with the perpetration of armored truck robberies during the 70s, the 80s.
To broaden their reach, the FBI forms a task force with the Massachusetts State Police and Boston Police Department. They cast a wide net, questioning every informant they have.
You're really depending on confidential sources to lead you at least the right direction, people that are involved in this type of activity.
But the informants don't give the investigators anything. The investigation stalls. And agents know, with a gang this good, it is only a matter of time until they strike again. On December 22nd, 1987, robbers hold up an armored car at a Weymouth, Massachusetts bank and get away with over $1 million. Special Agent Jim Crawford.
They were not foolish at all to go buying large purchases or talking to anyone, and they pretty much operated in secret and were well disciplined to stay away from anybody that might inform on them.
Despite the task force's best efforts, the trail of the Weymouth robbers goes cold. The task force disbands after a year of hard work. Even so, investigators fear they haven't seen the last of the robbers.
I believe that these individuals would strike again. Number one, they were successful. The amounts of money they obtained was very significant. There was no indication to them that they were being closely monitored by the police or the FBI. And it was a matter of time that they were involved in another robbery.
Agents worry they will lose more than money if the robbers strike again.
The individuals that take the task on robbing an armored truck, first of all, go with the idea that they're going to escape and perpetrate this robbery no matter what they have to do. That would include killing police officers.
May 31st, 1989, a year and a half after the Weymouth robbery. At a bank in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, about 60 miles east of Boston. Agents' concerns about violence tragically come true. The robbers take control of the armored car in seconds. Once again, the robbers force the driver to take the armored car around to the back of a shopping center near the bank. It is the exact same MO as the last robbery, only this time they leave very little money behind. Robbing an armored car is more lucrative than a bank heist, according to FBI Special Agent Jim Crawford.
The average bank robbery today, between cameras and bulletproof glass and bait money, it's risky for not a whole lot of money, not substantial sums. If someone wants to spend the time and training on perpetrating an armored truck, the rewards are far greater.
They use a smoke grenade to obscure their escape. As the wounded armored car guard fights for his life, police try to find the men responsible.
Deborah, you saw 3 men come out of here? Yeah, I saw 3 of them.
Officers like Massachusetts State Police Staff Sergeant Richard Rand try to get descriptions of the robbers.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Some saw the robbery in progress, but as far as identifying the individuals or giving significant information about their identity, they were masked, and there was very little information that was provided that could lead to identifying the suspects.
Police see the robbers torched a getaway vehicle. They know the suspects had to find another way to flee. The most likely escape route, into the woods. But there's a deep stream that would be difficult to cross. Further into the woods, investigators find a makeshift bridge over the water.
They'd gone to the time of preparing their exit so that they could get across the stream and probably not get all that wet, so that they would obviously stand out to other people or law enforcement if they were approached in the short time after the robbery.
Officers follow the path and come out in a residential neighborhood. Across the street, a potential witness. Police learn the man saw something suspicious just a few minutes earlier.
Hello, sir.
He watched 3 men walk out of the woods carrying large sacks. Then a car drove up. He didn't get a good look at the men carrying the bags, but he saw the driver. Police issue an APB for the car with 4 men inside and radio the driver's description. Police dispatch helicopters to search for the vehicle. "40 minutes after the robbery, investigators find the robber's car a few miles from the bank. The robbers torched it to destroy the evidence. But unlike the Weymouth robbery, this time some items inside didn't burn, including a blanket, a bank bag which held money, and an unexploded dye marker designed to go off when thieves opened the money bags. Because the dye marker didn't explode, the robbers must be experienced enough to open the money bags without setting them off. This time, the fire didn't destroy the vehicle identification number.
Well, the VIN plates typically survive these fires, and they're visible through the windshield. And first thing that was done by arriving law enforcement was to run the VIN numbers.
Police learned the car was stolen months earlier in Weymouth, Massachusetts. The FBI finally has evidence that could put them on the robbers' trail. May 31st, 1989. The FBI and local police investigate a violent armored car robbery. The robbers get away with over $800,000. The robbers shot an armored car guard in the back. They left him to die in the bank's parking lot. Paramedics rushed the guard to the hospital. Miraculously, he survived. A few miles away from the bank, investigators found a burned getaway car. They recovered the VIN number and determined it had been reported stolen in Weymouth, Massachusetts, months earlier. Police found another torched vehicle in the rear of the bank. They believe the robbers also burned it as a diversion. The police and the FBI get a break. They find a flare inside that was designed to start the fire. It didn't burn completely. This car was also reported stolen, but its ignition was intact. At this scene, the evidence helps the FBI. But the wounded guard signals that these robbers are becoming more dangerous. Even with the evidence left behind, Massachusetts State Police Staff Sergeant Richard Rand fears these robbers will be tough to catch.
They had a good plan in place to execute the robbery. They had a good plan in place to make their escape. And they had a good plan in place to destroy whatever evidence could possibly be left at the scene for law enforcement to gather against them. So they had done their homework. They knew the armored car schedule. They knew the bank schedule. They knew everything that they needed to know about how to execute their plan, and it was a very well executed plan.
Agents interview witnesses and learn the robbers used duct tape to seal the gap between their sleeves and gloves, as well as their pants and boots.
These robbers were very sophisticated in that they made sure that they didn't shed any evidence at these scenes.
Investigators find no useful evidence inside the armored car, no bullet casings at the scene. The Fitchburg job is so similar to the robbery in Weymouth 18 months earlier that it catches the attention of FBI Special Agent Jim Crawford.
The similarities between the Fitchburg and the Weymouth robbery were that, number one, they were both professionally done. Both robberies were timed. They knew exactly how much time they were going to spend in the area of the victim truck. They used an incendiary device, both on the getaway vehicles. These people knew exactly what they wanted to do, and they knew how to do it.
But the FBI and local police still know very little about this gang, other than the fact that they are experienced and dangerous. It will take every weapon in the FBI's arsenal to bring them down. Investigators follow up on their best clue left by the Fitchburg robbers, the burned car. They learned the car had been reported stolen from South Boston 6 months earlier. But the vehicle's ignition showed no signs of tampering. Police suspect the robbers may have had a key.
I interviewed the owner. He had stated that he had in fact reported the car stolen, but that he had lent the car to a friend, and that friend had come back to him and said that the car was stolen. He'd parked it somewhere and it had been stolen.
The friend who borrowed the car is named Greg Hicks.
FBI. Can you speak to him a second, please?
Investigators have reason to suspect Hicks himself in the theft.
We came up with the fact that he had a criminal record for a number of petty crimes and auto theft, and it seemed like he had a substance abuse problem.
Craig, we'll show you a picture.
Investigators pressure Hicks to come clean about what happened to the car.
It wasn't particularly difficult. After some conversation about the severity of the crime, that he'd been used in an armored car robbery, somebody been shot, these are serious crimes, and that because he was the last person to have the car, and he could be implicated. He had admitted that the car was not in fact stolen, that he'd borrowed the car, and that he'd given the car to a person, and that he'd gone back to the owner of the car and told him that the car was stolen so that the owner would report it stolen.
Greg Hicks also admits to stealing the sedan used in the Fitchburg robbery. He says he gave both vehicles to a man named Carl Tucker the night before the gang struck the armored car in Fitchburg. Investigators hit the streets again, asking their sources about Carl Tucker. Nobody knows anything. They turned to veteran Boston Police Detective Martin Coleman.
He was a sleeper. We knew nothing about him. He was doing aluminum siding and replacement windows out of a storefront on Broadway in South Boston. He owned the building, but his hobby was robbing armored cars and getting information about armored cars.
Investigators do not have enough evidence to confront Tucker. There are no eyewitnesses to the crime, and he has made no incriminating statements. All they have is Greg Hicks' claim that he gave stolen vehicles to Tucker. Agents tail him, trying to learn more.
We had confidential sources indicate that the persons responsible for these robberies were hanging out at a lounge in South Boston.
investigators try to learn the identities of Tucker's associates. At the same bar, they see a known bank robber named Fred Rogan. Rogan has a connection to a robber Crawford knows all too well.
He was an individual that came to my attention back in the 70s. He was suspect in the robbery in Braintree, associated with Richie Harold. I had done surveillances in the 70s and seen Richie Harold meet with him. On one occasion, I believed I observed them surveilling a bank in the area of Quincy, Massachusetts.
If Fred Rogan was involved in the 2 armored car robberies, it would explain how the robbers could pull off such an elaborate job. Almost 2 years after the Weymouth heist and 2 months after the Fitchburg robbery, agents finally have suspects. The question is whether agents can bring down this dangerous gang before it is too late. 2 armored car heists 16 months apart net a gang of robbers over $1.8 million.
Got it? Go.
On the first job, on December 22nd, 1987, the gang left no evidence behind and took over $1 million. It is one of the largest heists in New England history. The second heist didn't net as large a take, but the robbers made an uncharacteristic mistake. They failed to completely torch a getaway car. A VIN number on the vehicle led them to a man named Carl Tucker.
Damn stuff.
Tucker hangs out at bars frequented by Fred Rogan, the protege of a dangerous but now dead armored car robber named Richie Harold. While agents know quite a bit about Fred Rogan, they know very little about Carl Tucker. Investigators hit Boston's streets to ask contacts in the city's criminal underworld for background on Tucker and any associates he might have. Boston Police Department Detective Martin Coleman is part of the FBI task force investigating the robberies.
We had a pretty good idea who was capable of doing these armored car robberies. And it was, as the saying goes, round up the usual suspects, and that's exactly who we started to look at.
One of the usual suspects is convicted thief Steve Farrell, who just got out of prison weeks earlier. He couldn't have been part of these robberies, but he might know the men who were.
He had committed armored car robberies himself. As an employee of one of the armored car companies, he drove off with the truck one day.
It isn't long before Farrell gives investigators a big break.
I said, do you have any ideas of who the armored car crew is out doing these armored cars?
Farrell automatically states that Carl Tucker is probably involved.
And I was shocked that I hadn't even mentioned the fact to him that he had ordered the stolen cars. I set up a meeting with him and Special Agent Crawford in a Chinese restaurant in the middle of Chinatown.
We operated, I should say, with the source on a very confidential basis. There were only 2 people that knew that basically he existed during the course of this investigation. That was myself for months and months and Detective Coleman, because we were concerned not only for his safety, but any possible, because these people had contacts with different police authorities.
He's a low person. He's into everything.
Steve Farrell explains he knows Carl Tucker fairly well as an acquaintance in Boston's criminal underworld, but they have never worked together on a job. He says Tucker is known on the streets as the King, and that he uses a legitimate business to launder dirty money from robberies.
I know his ins and outs.
Farrell's help is a huge break for the investigation. His information is solid, important, and he wants to help shut this gang down. He volunteers to work as an FBI informant to gather more information on Carl Tucker.
I don't know how much longer I've got.
Farrell explains he's in failing health because of a heart condition and wants to make up for his criminal past before it's too late.
The source wanted to show his children that he had moral fiber. He wasn't just a criminal. And to prove it, this was his way of proving that he could do something. He wanted to prove that he wasn't the person that his kids thought he was.
Investigators are concerned for Farrell's safety and caution him that he'll have to enter a witness relocation program once the investigation is complete. Farrell is still willing to put his life on the line. It isn't long before Farrell establishes contact with Carl Tucker.
Hey, man, what you doing?
All right.
All right.
Doing all right.
Hey,
They were both aware of each other's backgrounds. They both, streetwise, trusted each other.
But trust in Boston's criminal underworld only goes so far. Tucker is slow to talk.
He always played it cool, never told him he was in the armored car business, never mentioned any other members of the gang. And this went on for quite a while.
Looking for it?
Farrell hints that he needs work, hoping Carl Tucker will bring him into the gang. But Tucker is too cautious to take the bait.
Nothing changed but time.
We were getting nowhere. And finally we said to the source, why don't you tell him that you have a relative that's in the armored car driving as a driver?
Tucker is intrigued. He asks Farrell if he could use his contacts at the armored car company to obtain what is known as a trip ticket.
That'll help us out a lot.
A trip ticket would provide valuable secret information to a professional armored car robber.
You're not giving him the key to the armored car, but you're giving him the location where the armored car would be, at what hour, and what kind of money it would have.
The trip ticket was so valuable to the robbers, again, because any professional that believes he has inside information, it's like having inside information on a race or a lottery.
Farrell offers to do his best to get the trip tickets. The FBI agents on the case win approval from the U.S. Attorney's Office to furnish Farrell with trip tickets to give to Carl Tucker.
It was kind of one of those things you had to really think long and hard and willing to be very dedicated. Once you gave this, it was your responsibility to make sure that that armored car started its route and finished its route without being robbed at some other location.
The tickets are for an armored car's Tuesday routes. The handoff goes down. The FBI has set the trap. Now all they can do is watch and see if Tucker takes the bait.
That's great, thank you.
You know how tough it was.
In order to solve a series of violent armored car robberies, the FBI hands a known criminal specific information for an armored car's Tuesday route. It is a big risk, but one they have to take if their informant Steve Farrell is ever to win the trust of the FBI's prime suspect, Carl Tucker. The plan works. With the gift of the trip tickets, Farrell gains Tucker's confidence.
Everything good? Everything's great, thank you.
FBI technicians install a listening device in Steve Farrell's car to capture the increasingly open conversations Carl Tucker is having with the undercover source.
I'd have to say on this source that he was a natural. Always got direction from the FBI, things that you would want to say, basically not to entrap, that type of instruction, the legal instruction, but he knew the street as well as any seasoned FBI agent.
We only take a certain amount of money in a certain amount of time.
Carl Tucker begins to open up about his criminal enterprise with Farrell.
Splitting it up even? Pretty much.
But he is always vague about the exact details of future jobs. Surveillance efforts slowly reveal the identities of Tucker's associates, men the FBI know all about. Men like James Murphy.
Jimmy Murphy always claimed he wrote the book on armored cars. He always liked to brag that he was the best armored car robber in the country.
Another associate is Michael Habich.
Well, Michael Habich was a career criminal. He'd been in prison most of his life. He always carrying a gun, a violent criminal, also an armored car robber.
Investigators know Fred Rogan is an old pro.
He had a history of bank robbery and armored car robberies. He was one of the usual suspects and lived within 200 or 300 yards of the Weymouth armored car robbery.
We don't get greedy. Right.
Farrell takes it all in,
Do our homework.
and so does the FBI.
Yeah, things are good. Low key. Low key.
Agents obtained the trip tickets from an armored car company that agreed to assist in the investigation. An armored car crew volunteers to help the task force. Agents warn the guards that a gang of armored car robbers will have trip tickets for their Tuesday routes. The agents assure the guards that they will not be alone.
Bad guys have trip tickets. We'd placed an FBI agent in the armored truck, the potential victim truck, who was there basically to safeguard the guards, to be there in case something went wrong, to be there in the event that something happened earlier than we anticipated.
A team of investigators and agents will also tail the armored car. Over the next few months, agents observe the suspects shadowing the armored car.
They looked at the truck every Tuesday, and they timed it, what time it arrived and what time it left. And they knew exactly, same guards all the time. It was very interesting to watch them and not get caught ourselves.
Agents can never be sure whether any given Tuesday will be a dry run or the day the robbers strike. It adds up to a lot of long hours.
Every Tuesday for months, we started at 4 in the morning and didn't get through until the armored car left. And then we followed the armored car for the rest of its route to make sure that they weren't still following and going to take them down in another location.
June 1990, in Methuen, Massachusetts. FBI agents and an assault team watch what starts out as another dry run. Then, the suspects start to make their move.
Go, go, go!
June 1990, in Methuen, Massachusetts. An FBI task force watches a gang of dangerous armored car robbers. The gang spends months shadowing an armored car. An FBI task force believes the men got away with 2 robberies, one in 1987 and one in 1989, that netted them almost $2 million. Agents can never be sure if the suspects are rehearsing an upcoming robbery or if it's the real thing. At the bank in Methuen, the gang makes its move.
One of the vehicles they were driving made an overt move towards the armored truck.
Go, go, go!
Based on that, one of the surveillance vehicles followed just for safety purposes.
But the FBI task force and Special Agent Jim Crawford discover it's just another dress rehearsal. Being safe comes with a price.
Stand down, stand down.
Their prime suspect, Carl Tucker, could discover he's being watched.
Do a lot of homework too.
The FBI has an informant, an ex-con named Steve Farrell, who has earned Carl Tucker's confidence. Through listening devices installed in Farrell's car, agents learn that Tucker was spooked by the Methuen experience.
He indicated that he believed that this could possibly be a setup. And our source was reprimanded, did you tell anybody about the activities of this location? Based on that discussion, our source backed off and said, who's to say somebody else didn't mention something?
Farrell tells Tucker that they can't work together if they don't trust each other.
Get caught trying. Yeah, you're right. Procedures they have to follow. All right?
Tucker calms down and later tells Farrell that he and his crew will shift the robbery target to a bank in Abington, Massachusetts. The trip tickets the robbers are working with give precise times when the armored car arrives and leaves Abington, and the amount of cash on board.
When they targeted the Abington, it was believed they approximately had $2 million in that truck on a given run.
Over the next several months, the FBI task force watches Tucker and his men stalk the armored car as it delivers money to Abington. The long hours every Tuesday takes a toll on investigators and resources.
There was lots of pressure to get this done because every Tuesday, half the office in Boston was out on this case. The surveillance team, the SWAT team, the airplane, everyone was working.
Agents are concerned about the expense and fatigue caused by shadowing the robbers.
You don't have many people.
So they instruct their source to tell Carl Tucker that the Abington Bank is closing its branch, and that on January 9th, the armored car will remove a vast amount of cash.
We held that carrot out. It was a solid gold carrot. The bank was closing. It's time to do it.
Go ahead. It was what's going on? It's going to go down tomorrow. And that's the day they're going to do a dry
Agents learn that Carl Tucker is planning a dry run on January 9th, 1991. This could be the dry run that turns into a robbery. Agents surveil members of Tucker's gang in the early hours of January 9th. They notice pre-dawn activity that suggests the gang is up to more than a dry run.
They were seen carrying what were believed to be bags containing weapons, the way they were being handled. We strongly believed then that they were going to possibly make a move and attempt to perpetrate this robbery.
The suspects arrive hours before the armored car is scheduled to show up. They stake out the location. They don't know they are not alone. The FBI task force is there. Agents quickly identify multiple vehicles containing suspects, including a van. The FBI assault team is prepared for a robbery attempt when the armored car arrives.
Get out, we're going to take them down quick.
There was high risk involved basically on apprehending these people. We believed they would be armed based on prior history.
But by 10:30 a.m., the armored car still has not shown up. It's running behind schedule, unusual in the armored car business. Both the robbers and law enforcement are on edge. Then, the robbers discover the surveillance effort and attempt to flee. Agents decide to take them down. task force converges on all the suspects' cars at once. The agents know they are inside, but they don't know if the men are armed. They proceed with caution.
Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. Get your hands up. Get your hands up. Come on out. Come on out. Turn around. Turn around. Turn around.
Carl Tucker is taken into custody, along with two men from Ireland named Michael McNaught and Stephen Fitzpatrick. The old pro Fred Rogan had been standing guard outside a van. He tries to walk away by acting like a bank customer. But the ruse doesn't work. Inside the robbers' vehicles, investigators find several items that prove Abington was definitely not a dry run. Ski masks, police scanners, smoke grenades. The van had enough items to start a small war. The armored car finally arrives nearly a half hour behind schedule. Agents asked the driver why the armored car was so late.
We got stopped for speeding by the state police, he said. And then, what did you say to the trooper? We told him we were on our way to get robbed. And FBI was waiting for us. The trooper didn't believe them and gave them the ticket.
In the end, all of the participants in the attempted armored car robbery in Abington were convicted. Michael Habich was sentenced to 19 years. The oldest of the group, Fred Rogan, got 10.5 years, as did the Irishmen Michael McNaught and Stephen Fitzpatrick. Carl Tucker received 19 years. James Murphy was the only suspect tied to the Fitchburg robbery. A witness saw him behind the wheel of the getaway car. Murphy fought his charges and received a 65-year sentence.
They were all criminals to the core. They lived a life of crime, and they were all repeat offenders. And they never got out of the business, and I assume that they're out of it now because there have been no more armored car robberies.
The FBI's chief source, Steve Farrell, provided damning testimony that helped convict the robbers.
I was with the prosecutors during the trial. The source's life was threatened by one of the suspects, then threatened his life in my presence.
Because of the threats against him, Steve Farrell went into the witness protection program. He died a few years later, knowing he had at least in part made up for his criminal past.
I would say with the source involved in this case, redeem himself, I would agree. He risked his life.
FBI investigators were never able to charge anyone with the Weymouth robbery. But if the Abington robbers perpetrated the job, it was a crime that came with a steep price. Each of them will spend at least a decade in prison.